Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or you can subscribe to the channel. As you can see, today we're not black and white with red, right, and that raging bull type of feel, that dark sort of feel. We're letting go of that today. We're going to go with the yellow room and the colourful flowers because today's a great day. Right, Chris Andre is in a good mood today because of some of the news that has broken today. Make no mistake, until certain acts are repealed and certain laws are brought into place to protect the potential of these things going ahead, this is far from over. They will come back, make no mistake, but we need to celebrate each little victory. So shout out to everybody that's resisted and that's fought for their own liberties and those of their families and their fellow man. Give yourself a pat on the back. You are definitely on the right side of history, and today's a great day. Let's talk boxing. A little bit of a roundup of various things that are occurring. I want to start with Kell-Brook and Amir Khan. You know, Kell-Brook has revealed that there is a rematch clause in place for their fight, and this seems to have infuriated a lot of people. I'm not sure why. This isn't a case of a couple of guys fighting whereby one is clearly superior to the other and one of them has a couple of belts, and by signing up for a rematch he's holding up a unification, he's holding up knowing who's fighting for the undisputed. There's nothing like that. You're talking about two guys that are way past their best. There's a lot of needle between them. Offensively, there's still a lot of skill on display. There's still potentially a case though where they've both sort of declined together in terms of what they're capable of absorbing, the punishment they're capable of absorbing, which means they're both vulnerable. Now, when you've got needle, you've got history, you've got some really good offensive skills on display, and then you've got vulnerability as well. This, you know, is set up for fireworks. So if it's a really close competitive fight and then one of them's got a rematch clause, you'd love to see it again. And if you don't, that's great. You don't have to pay for the pay-per-view to see the rematch, right? It makes no difference. No one's holding up the division. So why would this upset people? Enjoy the show, man. And if you don't want to see the rematch, you don't see the rematch. Potentially, you could get a barn burner of a fight, a lot better than you thought it would be. And then you can't wait to see the rematch. And you'll be delighted that one of them's got a clause. Right? So you've got nothing to lose. Enjoy it. And in fact, this made me think about other potential rematches and even maybe trilogies that could have taken place that we were not given. We were starved of, right? I was watching Malignaggi in an interview. I think it was called In the Blue Corner. And it's a long interview. It's like an hour long and he covers a whole host of things. Paulie at his talkative best, talking about his career and his past and rivalries and a whole bunch of other stuff, drugs in the sport and so on and so forth. And one of the things he speaks about, and I'm so delighted he brought it up because something that I've brought up in the past, it's something that I've spoken about in the past. I'm delighted that he brought it up. A real opportunity that the sport of boxing missed, in my humble opinion, was the rematch, which could have led to a trilogy between Adrian Broner and Malignaggi. Adrian Broner at the time was on the pound-for-pound list. And Malignaggi was this very skilled, wily old veteran that a lot of people thought he doesn't have the pop to hurt Broner. Broner's going to walk right through him. And it became quite apparent early on that Paulie was the higher volume guy, the much better mover. They were both very fast. Broner, though, was fast in spurts. He'd fight in spurts. Not particularly mobile. He wasn't going to walk Paulie down the way people thought, and it made for a really entertaining fight. I personally felt Malignaggi won the fight 7-5, but it was a close fight. It could have been a draw. It could have gone either way, and that made for a potential for a rematch, particularly because the build-up was sensational. It was the most watched fight in the sport that year. I mean, that tells you all you need to know. It really caught the imagination because these two disliked each other. You knew that this was Paulie's side chick, like he used to say. You could tell that wasn't his real girlfriend. He tested her, what's my mother's name? She didn't have a clue. But the fact that some quarters either believed or pretended to believe, just to get under his skin, that this was Paulie's actual girl. And Paulie's got this Vince Vaughn thing to him, right? And I've got a lot of people in my family like this, so I always laugh at it, where he starts off sort of calm, talking, and as he's talking, he's winding himself up, thinking, I get accused of doing this in my personal life. He's winding himself up while he's talking because he's thinking of the injustice that's occurring. So he starts off slow, and then by the end of his own speech, it becomes a proper furious rant, right? And you'd see that, and then you'd see Broner just prodding at him again, and then Paulie will come back with this hilarious trash talking, and it was just a brilliant build-up. And Paulie made the point that if that fight had gone his way or was a draw because he felt that he was robbed and the scorecards were definitely way too wide, had it been a draw and he'd kept his belt and they ordered a rematch, or if it was given to Paulie and there was a rematch, he's saying either way, the belts, it was that sort of rivalry where it was always going to be a close fight between them. They were very well matched, and you might see belts switching hands. And because you've got these great trash talkers where there's needle and they hate each other and the fan bases were hating each other, it really could have captured the imagination. Instead, Paulie went on to fight Zab Judah, a fight that he won, and Broner went on to fight Maidana and he slipped up, and that cost the potential of a rematch. So my question to you is, which rematch or potential trilogy would you have liked to have seen again? That's a little bit out of left field. I don't want to hear Canelo Golovkin 3. That's obvious, right? Something a little bit out of left field. Whoever turns around and says, man, we really missed out on Broner and Malignaggi 2. Not many people, right? So tell me something out of left field that you think we really missed out on that you'd have loved to have seen. Now, moving on from that, the WBC have announced that Conor Benn, Mario Barrios, Mauricio Lara, Lee McGregor and Chris Billum-Smith have been removed from their rankings as they have not registered for the VADA clean boxing program. They still have the opportunity to enroll and be reinstated. Now, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, of course. Conor Benn, obviously, and Mauricio Lara are particularly renowned for their heavy-handed sort of punch and power. Chris Billum-Smith is renowned for his physical strength and so on and so forth. A lot of people are sort of adding 2 and 2 up and you know, they're making an assumption that these guys are suddenly dirty. Look, we don't know. There are various reasons they might not be signed up to a VADA protocol. I don't know. Maybe they're signed up to other protocols, other testing methods. Paulie Malignaggi in that interview was saying if he could make one change in boxing, it would have been to make drugs testing so strict and so random in its frequency that you would never again see a guy post 35 years old become a world champion, and you would never again see a guy become a multi-weight world champion, because that's how hard it would be without these performance enhancing drugs, which he believes are slipping through the net, so to speak, when it comes to testing. Let me know what you think about this. Does this raise your suspicions? Does it make you trust these fighters any less? Are there fighters that make you think, I trust him, but not so much him because of their style or because of their punching power or whatever it might be? What do you make of it when you hear these types of things? Eddie Hearn has said that he has made a very big offer to Anthony Yarde for the Joshua Buatsi fight. He's also made an offer to Craig Spider Richards, and this comes not long after, just days after, Tunde Ajayi was saying he wants to see Joshua Buatsi fight someone of note. He's saying, who's he fought? Anthony Yarde's fighting people. Who has he fought? And he does make a point in the sense that the Vlasov fight would have been a real step up, you know. Ricards Bolotniks, he is a good fighter, there's no doubt about it, but he's not proven himself to be elite. I know BoxRec had him ranked in the top 9 in the world, and he earned that, right? He earned a good ranking. I'm not saying he is in the top 9 light heavyweights in the world in terms of ability, but he's worked hard to get there. So it's a legitimate win. There's no problem with that. But he hasn't been in there with the likes of a Lyndon Arthur, certainly not a Kovalev. You know, Anthony Yarde's fought at a higher level. So you don't necessarily have to win all your big fights, is what Tunde Ajayi is essentially saying, but he wants to see them fight each other. So he's saying, why isn't Joshua Buatsi fighting Callum Johnson? Now, to bring Callum Johnson's name to it, in my opinion, is unfair, because Johnson has fought Beterbiev, and Beterbiev at the time Johnson fought him and dropped him, might I add, was a better fighter than Kovalev when Kovalev fought Anthony Yarde. So if you're talking about who's fought at a higher level between Johnson and Yarde, you'd have to go with Johnson. Now, really, you could make the argument of Yarde should be fighting Johnson next rather than Buatsi until Buatsi fights a big name. I would accept that, right? Buatsi's a brilliant fighter. I'm not pretending that he's not at their level in terms of his ability. We're just talking about if you want to go down the route of who's fighting who. Nonetheless, the Vlasov fight would have been a real test, and it fell through for whatever reason. I was hoping we'd get to see that again, because I think Vlasov is a brilliant fighter. I thought he beat Joe Smith. So that would have been a fight I would have been really interested in seeing. It hasn't happened. I would have no problem with Yarde Buatsi. I would have no problem with the Spider Richards fight either. Buatsi against Spider Richards. It's good that we're going to start to see, hopefully, these light heavyweights fight each other now. Where do you stand on this? Do you agree with Tunde Ajayi? Do you feel that before Buatsi was to get a shot at a guy like Anthony Yarde, he would have to earn that place? Or do you see them all as contenders, actually, and Yarde hasn't won a world title, so there's no problem with Yarde fighting Buatsi at all? And it would be a big money fight, a massive domestic rivalry, and it could really spark off what could be a real hot light heavyweight division here in the UK. Now, moving on from that, Eddie Hearn has also reported that they're trying to make Oscar Rivas versus Alen Babic, and they've reached out to Rivas' team for a potential fight for the WBC Bridgerweight title. Now, I assume this is going to be in Canada as a result. I still need to see Bryant Jennings against Oscar Rivas. You know, that first fight, Jennings was winning quite comfortably. He ended up getting caught late on. It's a fantastic rematch. It's got all the makings for a brilliant rematch because you know that Jennings is the better boxer. Can he avoid this pocket rocket who stopped him, who dropped Dillian White? You know, he always seems to find moments, Oscar Rivas, to hurt an opponent. That makes it exciting. Alen Babic is going to bring the thunder, you know that. I can't envisage a method in which he would beat Rivas, maybe if he shocks him, stuns him early. But really, I think he's going to be walking into a storm. Yes, I know he's got somewhat of an amateur pedigree. He's a better boxer than people give him credit for. But I can't envisage him keeping Oscar Rivas off for 12 rounds. I think he is going to want to go hell for leather at some stage. And I would certainly back Oscar Rivas in a firefight like that. So Rivas Jennings for me is what really captures the imagination. And if they can't do it in Canada, they need to look for an alternative territory. You can't be using the excuse of, yeah, well, you know, there are these measures that are in place in my home country and you're going to have to abide by them. No, this is rubbish. You cannot put a clause in a contract which equates to a man taking a medical procedure that he does not want to take. This is the equivalent of a duck, which brings me on to Devin, Haney and George Kambosos. It started a few days ago when Devin Haney sent a tweet to George Kambosos to say, are we making this fight happening or what? I'm agreeing to all your terms, whether it's the, right, I'm pointing to my arm, the postman's knock, don't want to trigger algorithms here, whether it's that or the travel, it's starting to look like some ducking is going on. To which Kambosos replies, I love how you manipulate and lie to your fans, talk a big game but show no action, a bit like your fights. I'm patiently waiting with all the belts for the offer from your boss, Mr. Eddie Hearn, and he's tagged him in, because I've got a stadium ready in Australia, but I can see the excuses already. Haney replies, so you want our side to put up the money up in your backyard? Okay, no problem. See you soon. Keep those belts safe because I'll be leaving Australia soon. And Kambosos replies, I'm not here for Twitter fights like most of these cats. I'm here for real fights. To be honest, you lot have got to give respect to myself, Teofimo and Loma. Out of the one Emperor and 4 Kings in the Matrix, we 3 stepped up and fought, whilst the others fought on Twitter. Just stating facts, now you tell me who ducks. Devin Haney replies, that's right bro, Loma is out. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Is he saying he's out because he lost the fight to Teofimo Lopez as though it's a round robin knockout? I don't know. If that's the case, then I guess it further adds weight though to Kambosos' argument, because if you want the potential of losing, you've got to fight some of the other top 8 lightweights, right? Beating guys that are not top 8 lightweights is going to prevent you from losing. You know, if he's not out, then does that mean Tank's in it? Because you've already said Tank's out of the question. But we'll leave that aside because we want to get back to what we're saying here. I don't want to digress. Today, Kambosos replied to Bob Arum. Arum said, nobody knows who Haney is in Australia. Kambosos-Lomachenko is a much bigger fight. To which George Kambosos replied, Mr. Arum, with all due respect, they're not coming in to watch Haney or Lomachenko. They're coming to watch their emperor return home with all the belts after taking over boxing. These belts are Australia's and Greece's, and they're going to need an army to take them off us. And he's put emojis of the Greek flag, the Australian flag, and then a stadium. Now, with all due respect to George Kambosos, and I do mean that because somebody's put up, this franchise belt makes people lose their minds. They get so arrogant. And I basically tweeted to say, what do you want him to be? Subservient? Why should he kiss their behinds, basically? He's the champ. It's his homecoming fight, right? He deserves a homecoming fight. The idea that Loma is more of a star than Haney globally isn't relevant to Kambosos because it's Kambosos' homecoming. Kambosos is going to fill up that stadium in Australia. Doesn't matter who he's fighting, right? He's the star in his backyard now. You've got to respect that. However, any demand to make a fight happen in Australia is essentially a mandate for that postman's knock. Now, if a guy wasn't willing to do that, if a guy wasn't willing to follow that mandate and you don't give him the fight as a result, it is the equivalent of a duck. You are cutting the guy out of an opportunity to fight for a title. What you're doing essentially is making a demand that is not boxing related in order to avoid the fight. Yes, you're entitled to your homecoming fight. Go and fight a bum. Go and fight a domestic rival, someone who you're going to beat. Get your homecoming, right? If that's what you want. If that's your priority, which I understand Eddie Hearn himself has said, Kambosos is entitled to that. Nobody will be able to say you're ducking. But then after that, have it on foreign soil. Now, nobody's saying it has to be in the United States. No, why should he fight Devin Haney on foreign soil? But there are alternatives. With the measures now being dropped in the UK, you fought in the UK before, make the fight happen in the UK. We've got a massive boxing community here. We'd be loving the fact that we've got a fight like that. We would fill a big arena. There's no doubt about it. Do it in Saudi Arabia, where they're looking to invest big time in big fights. But you can't demand that a guy has to, if he's not willing, to take a medical procedure in order to fight him for the belts. What kind of rubbish is that? So I want to see Bryant Jennings get his shot, and I want to see whether it's Haney or Lomachenko. There's a case to be made for either guy. Personally, I believe it should be Devin Haney so that we can see undisputed. You cannot make that demand, though, of these guys. Let me know what you think about all that we've covered here today. There's another video coming up as well about the little spat between Ben Davison, Shane McGuigan, and maybe even Peter Fury. He seems to have been dragged into it. Billy Joe Saunders has given an opinion as well, so we'll talk about that. But let me know what you think about everything we've covered here today. Thank you for watching, everybody. Take care. Chat to you soon, and God bless.